The desert stretched endlessly beneath the violet sky, the sand swirling in the breeze like an ocean of dust. It was the kind of barren wasteland that swallowed every sound, leaving nothing but the whisper of the wind. But tonight, something was different. The stillness was shattered by a deafening roar that seemed to tear the very air apart. Ryan Holbrook, a reclusive mechanic, was welding the frame of an old truck when the ground trembled beneath him. He staggered, dropping his tools as the desert floor shook with such intensity that it seemed like an earthquake had struck. He looked up, instinctively shielding his eyes from the sudden blinding light. A shape tore through the sky. A massive, sleek vessel, its edges glowing with a strange ethereal energy. It wasn't an airplane or a satellite. No, it was something alien. Its metal surface flickered as it plummeted toward the ground, trailing smoke and fire in its wake. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the fiery trail across the sky, the ship spinning uncontrollably as it descended toward Earth. Without thinking, Ryan ran toward the wreckage, his boots kicking up sand as he sprinted across the desert, a primal instinct driving him. He had seen planes go down before, heard about the occasional meteor strike. But this was something else entirely. He reached a ridge just in time to see the alien craft smash into the earth below, the ground trembling beneath him with a shockwave that almost knocked him off his feet. A massive plume of smoke rose from the impact site, and Ryan hesitated for only a moment before pushing forward. As he descended toward the wreckage, he could see the twisted, scorched remnants of the ship's hull scattered across the desert floor. Someone, had survived. The air around him was thick with the scent of burning metal and something unidentifiable. He coughed and pulled his shirt over his mouth, trying to block out the choking fumes. In the distance, he spotted movement, a figure barely visible through the haze of smoke. "Help!" The voice was faint, barely a whisper, but it reached him nonetheless. Ryan's eyes widened. Was it someone else, or was it something else? With his heart pounding in his chest, Ryan approached cautiously, his mind racing. As he neared the source of the voice, his eyes locked onto something utterly alien. A woman, no, not quite human, lay crumpled on the ground, her skin glowing faintly like the bioluminescence of deep-sea creatures. Her limbs were twisted in unnatural angles, and she was barely breathing. But her eyes, those eyes, were wide open, glowing with an unsettling intelligence that chilled him to his core. "Please, help me," she gasped, her voice trembling. "They're coming." Ryan froze. His brain struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. Her face was humanoid, but there was something deeply unsettling about her features. A glowing blue vein ran along the side of her neck, pulsing faintly. Her skin shimmered in the moonlight, as if alive. He had no idea what she was, but one thing was clear: she wasn't from Earth. As he knelt beside her, Ryan tried to steady his breath. "What happened? Who are you?" Her eyes flickered, and she reached out weakly, her fingers brushing his arm. "My name is Lyra. You have to fix my ship. They'll be here any minute. Please." Ryan hesitated, looking at the wreckage around him. The ship wasn't just damaged, it was torn apart, its hull barely holding together. And yet, despite the destruction, it was clear that whatever this was, it was beyond anything human technology could even begin to fathom. "Who's coming?" he asked, his voice tight. The woman, Lyra, closed her eyes in pain, the glow from her veins flickering erratically. "The Tyrixians, they're hunting me." The words sent a shiver down Ryan's spine. The air around him seemed to grow colder, the night stretching out unnervingly long. He looked up at the dark sky, half expecting to see something else coming for him. Something worse. He shook his head, pushing away the rising panic. He was just a mechanic, a quiet, lonely man who had no place in any kind of intergalactic war. And yet, here he was, standing over an alien woman who was begging for his help. Ryan looked back at her, his mind racing. The world had just changed in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. And then, in the distance, he heard it. A low hum, growing louder by the second. He turned, his heart racing as the unmistakable sound of something massive approaching from the sky filled the air. The Tyrixians were coming. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched beside the alien woman, her body trembling in the sand. The hum from the distance grew louder, a rhythmic, mechanical sound that vibrated in the air like the drone of an incoming storm. His breath came in shallow gasps as he scanned the wreckage of the ship behind her. The craft had crumpled like a tin can under the force of its crash, a jagged mess of scorched metal and strange, glowing runes. There was no way this thing could be repaired, not by anything he'd ever seen. But as Lyra's weak hand grasped his wrist, he felt an odd pull, something almost magnetic in the force of her touch. Her voice, though fragile, was clear. "You must fix it," she insisted, her words coming out in strained whispers. "I need to leave. They're too powerful. If they catch me." Ryan hesitated. His mind screamed that he should leave. Run. Call for help. Get the authorities involved. But the look in her eyes, desperate and full of something he couldn't define, fear, hope, maybe even trust, held him in place. She was no ordinary person. Whatever she was, whatever she needed, wasn't from this world. The hum in the distance was now unmistakable, vibrating through the ground beneath him, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. Ryan began, but the words stuck in his throat. He didn't know what to say. He was just a mechanic, a guy who fixed trucks and cars for a living, far removed from anything remotely close to an alien invasion. Yet here he was, staring down at a glowing woman, pleading for his help in fixing a ship that was beyond comprehension. Lyra's breath hitched, and her glowing blue veins pulsed erratically under her translucent skin. "I need your help to finish the repairs," she said again, more urgently this time. "They won't stop until I'm dead. The Tyrixians, they'll destroy everything. You don't understand. This ship, it's more than just a ship. It's a weapon." A weapon? Ryan's stomach turned at the thought. The Tyrixians were the stuff of legend. Stories from the far reaches of space, whispers of a race so powerful, so ruthless, that they had conquered entire star systems. He had never thought those stories could be real. But Lyra's words, her pleading eyes, something in her voice cut through his skepticism. As if on cue, a shadow passed across the moonlit desert sky. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. His gaze shot upward, the hum now almost deafening. The dark shape of something massive appeared, blotting out the stars. The Tyrixians weren't just coming, they were here. A massive black warship, gleaming with an otherworldly sheen, descended from the sky, casting an ominous shadow over the landscape. It was like nothing Ryan had ever seen. Sleek, angular, and huge, it tall, shifting in strange ways, as if it were made of liquid metal. It landed in a silent, terrifying motion, hovering just inches above the ground. The sound of its engines died instantly, leaving an oppressive stillness in the air. Lyra's breathing became shallow, her face contorted in fear. "They're here," she whispered. "You don't have much time." Ryan stood frozen, his body instinctively shifting to protect her, though he knew there was no way he could fight what was coming. Sweat began to bead on his forehead as his mind raced for a solution. He couldn't just leave her. He couldn't let them take her. He didn't know why, but something deep inside told him he was the only one who could help. "Stay down," Ryan ordered, trying to steady his trembling hands. "Stay low and stay quiet. We have to buy time." Lyra's eyes narrowed with a mix of determination and disbelief. "You don't understand," she said, her voice now stronger. "I don't have time. If they catch me." Before she could finish, the ship's hatch hissed open. A figure, tall and armored, stepped out of the vessel. Its dark, almost fluid form shimmered in the moonlight, and the air seemed to crackle with an unnatural energy. The Tyrixians were here, and they were looking for her. Ryan's blood ran cold as he realized just how much danger they were in. The armored figure raised its arm, and a low guttural voice echoed across the desert, cold and commanding. "We know you're here, Lyra. Surrender now, or we will level this entire world." Ryan's mind raced as he turned to Lyra, desperation in his eyes. I don't know how to stop them. What do we do?" Lyra's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Ryan saw the full weight of the fear that had been buried behind her calm exterior. "You have to fix my ship. Only then will we have a chance to escape. You're my last hope." The urgency in her voice hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't a soldier, and he wasn't prepared for any of this. But staring at the alien woman, then back at the towering Tyrixian, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't turn his back on her. Not now. Not when the stakes were this high. Ryan's hand shook as he reached for a nearby tool, his mind already working on the impossible task ahead. The Tyrixians were here, and they weren't leaving until they had what they came for. He had no choice. He had to fix the ship. For her. For Earth. And maybe, just maybe, to survive the coming storm. Ryan's hands trembled as he pulled tools from his workbench, his mind racing. The alien ship was wrecked. Half of it was scorched, its hull cracked open like an eggshell. But Lyra was right. If they didn't get the ship running, they wouldn't escape the Tyrixians. His heart hammered in his chest as he glanced back at her, her body still flickering with faint blue light. "Do you know how to fix it?" Ryan asked, his voice tight. He didn't even know why he asked. It was a stupid question. She was an alien. What did he think she could do? Yet he couldn't shake the sense of urgency that gripped him. Lyra nodded, her gaze locked on him. "I know, but I need you to help me with the power core. It's the only way to get the engines functional." He swallowed hard, staring at the wreckage. The power core was a glowing, pulsating sphere, a deep, radiant blue that pulsed with energy, almost like it had a life of its own. It was suspended in a chamber near the heart of the ship, which was now completely exposed. The more Ryan looked at it, the more it seemed wrong. Like the ship was alive, feeding off something beyond comprehension. Lyra moved toward the wreckage, but as she reached for the core, she paused, her expression darkening. "Be careful," she warned, her voice low. "This ship is more than a vessel. It's connected to my people's ancient power. If it's tampered with too much, it could trigger something terrible." Ryan froze. "What are you talking about? This thing isn't just a ship, is it?" She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with an almost ancient sorrow. "No, it's a weapon. The last of its kind. It was built to protect my people, but it was never meant to fall into the wrong hands." She glanced nervously toward the Tyrixian warship in the distance, still looming ominously over the desert. "I was sent to Earth to hide it, to keep it safe from them." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ryan's pulse quickened as he processed what she had just revealed. She wasn't just some stranded alien. She was a fugitive, carrying with her a weapon capable of unimaginable destruction. And now he was supposed to help her fix it. The ship's strange humming intensified, sending a chill down Ryan's spine. He could feel the energy in the air. The ship wasn't just waiting to be repaired, it was waiting to be unleashed. A gnawing feeling of dread settled in his stomach. He didn't trust it. He didn't trust any of it. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he demanded, his voice rising in frustration. "You brought me into this without explaining what the hell is going on." Lyra stepped back, her expression hardening for a moment, before softening again. "Because I couldn't. You wouldn't have helped me if you knew what I was running from." Her voice cracked with a rawness that made Ryan hesitate. "The Tyrixians are relentless. They hunt my people, and they would destroy Earth just to get their hands on this ship. I have no choice but to fix it, and I need your help to do it." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of everything. It felt like he was drowning in a sea of uncertainty, and no matter how hard he swam, there was no escape. The weight of her words pressed down on him, and despite the chaos, he couldn't help but feel sympathy for her. She was scared, terrified, even But was it enough to trust her? The distant hum of the Tyrixian warship grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath them. Ryan's heart skipped a beat as the warship's engines powered up. The ground trembled, and in the distance, a stream of harsh, cold light lit up the sky, cutting through the night like a blade. The Tyrixians weren't waiting anymore. "You need to fix the core," Lyra urged, urgency thick in her voice. If you don't, I'll never be able to outrun them. And neither will you." Ryan's blood ran cold as the full weight of her words sank in. There was no choice, no time to debate. The Tyrixians were closing in, and the only way out was to trust this alien woman who was asking him to do the unthinkable. Repair a ship that wasn't just a ship. Repair a weapon. As if reading his thoughts, Lyra's expression softened, her glowing eyes full of something unspoken. "I know this is a lot to ask, but I'm the only one who can stop them. And you're the only one who can help me. Please." The hum from the warship intensified, and Ryan could see the lights on the Tyrixian ship flickering as its guns powered up, ready for battle. It was a race against time, and every second spent doubting her, every moment of hesitation, was a moment that brought the enemy closer. "Okay," Ryan finally muttered, the decision settling on him like a heavy weight. He turned to face the wrecked ship, hands clenched tightly around the tools in his grip. "Let's fix your damn ship." Lyra gave a small nod, her eyes flickering with something like relief. But as she stepped closer, her voice grew darker. "Just remember, Ryan, what we're doing here is bigger than both of us. It's bigger than anything you've ever known. The Tyrixians aren't just after me. They're after the power to control the universe." Ryan's stomach churned as the realization hit him. The stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. He wasn't just helping a stranded alien. He was about to unleash something that could change the fate of the galaxy itself. And with the Tyrixian ship hovering just over the horizon, Ryan knew that if he didn't succeed, they were all dead. Ryan's pulse thundered in his ears as he turned back toward the wrecked ship. He felt the weight of Lyra's words pressing down on him like a vice, suffocating the air around him. He wasn't just fixing a broken-down engine anymore. He was diving headfirst into a war that had nothing to do with him. Or so he thought. Now he was fighting for survival. The Tyrixians were coming. Their ship hovered above the desert like a malevolent shadow, its engines powering up with a soft but ominous hum. Ryan could feel the ground beneath him vibrate, the oppressive weight of their presence sending a chill up his spine. "We don't have much time," Lyra whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the low roar of the Tyrixian vessel. She was crouched beside him, her strange, glowing eyes scanning the ship, her face a mask of both fear and determination. "We have to get the core online, or they'll tear this place apart." Ryan gritted his teeth. His hands were still shaking, but his mind was clear. There was no going back now. The alien warship was a living nightmare, but he had to do whatever it took to stop it. The ship, the weapon, was all they had left. If they couldn't repair it, Earth would fall with them. He crouched next to the exposed power core, running his fingers over the intricate designs that pulsed with faint blue energy. It was beautiful in a way, the glow soft yet unnervingly alive, like the beating heart of the ship. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Ryan asked, his voice tight. His hands hovered over the core, but he hesitated. He had no idea how this thing worked. It looked like something out of a sci-fi nightmare, a piece of technology far beyond anything he'd ever encountered. "How am I supposed to fix this?" Lyra stood close, her gaze never leaving the ship. "You don't need to understand it fully," she said, her voice steady but strained. "Just connect the core to the main conduit. Once the power is restored, it will activate the engine and the shields. It's the only way we can leave." Ryan shot her a sharp look. "The shields. The Tyrixians will destroy this place once they realize what we're trying to do," she replied quickly. "The shields are our only chance to survive long enough to power up the warp drive. Without them, we're sitting ducks." Ryan nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. He had no idea how to work on an alien ship, but he knew one thing for sure. If he didn't fix it, they were dead. His hands trembled as he began to work, trying to ignore the ominous hum of the Tyrixian ship as it slowly descended lower, closer to the ground. Every second felt like an eternity. As he unscrewed a panel and exposed the inner mechanics, he could feel the weight of the universe bearing down on him. The Tyrixians had weapons, advanced, terrifying weapons. He didn't stand a chance if they decided to fire. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. "Hurry," she urged. "We don't have much time before they breach the atmosphere." Ryan didn't need to be told twice. He yanked open a compartment and started wiring the core to the main power grid. The technology was so foreign, so alien, that it felt like he was connecting random pieces of a puzzle that didn't belong together. But the instructions in Lyra's hurried whispers were the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Suddenly, a low, almost mechanical growl rumbled in the distance, accompanied by a flash of light. Ryan's breath caught in his throat as he looked up. The Tyrixian ship was in full descent now, its massive engines flaring, its guns aimed directly at them. The air was thick with tension, and Ryan could feel the earth tremble beneath the approaching force. "They're going to fire," Lyra gasped, her face twisted with fear. "Hurry, Ryan. We can't survive without those shields." Ryan worked faster, his hands moving instinctively. Sweat dripped down his brow, stinging his eyes, but he didn't dare stop. Every second counted. He could feel the power building in the core, the ship beginning to hum in response. The strange energy inside the ship seemed to pulse and swirl, as if it had its own consciousness, and it was waking up. "Come on, come on," he muttered, his voice trembling as he connected the final circuit. A surge of blue light erupted from the core, flooding the room with a blinding glow. The ship's engines sputtered to life, a low, powerful rumble vibrating through the ground beneath them. The hum became a roar. Lyra stepped back, her eyes wide with something akin to relief. "It's working," she whispered, but her voice was filled with a new urgency. "We don't have much time. They're targeting us." Ryan whipped around just in time to see the Tyrixian warship's cannons glow a bright, deadly red. The air around them crackled with energy. A split second before the blast, the ship's energy shields activated with a sudden, electrifying crack. A force field shimmered to life around them, just as the first wave of destructive fire slammed into the invisible barrier. The ground shook as the shields absorbed the impact, but the force was enough to knock Ryan off his feet, sending him crashing to the sand. The ship groaned beneath the force of the blast, but it held. For now. Ryan pushed himself up, gasping for air as the sound of the Tyrixian guns firing again filled the air. "We're not out of the woods yet," he said, his voice barely a whisper as he looked up at Lyra, his heart racing. Lyra's face was pale, but her eyes burned with determination. "We need to move now. The warp drive is our only chance." Ryan didn't need any more convincing. They had no time left. The battle had just begun. Ryan's heart hammered in his chest as he staggered to his feet, his knees weak from the blast. The force field hummed with a low, vibrating pulse, flickering slightly as it absorbed the second wave of Tyrixian fire. The air was thick with dust, and the desert was now bathed in the eerie glow of the alien ship's shields. His mind raced. He had no idea how long the shields would hold, but it wouldn't be long enough if they couldn't get the warp drive online. "Is it ready?" Lyra's voice was a breathless whisper as she knelt beside him, her glowing eyes scanning the sky, constantly aware of the approaching Tyrixians. Ryan wiped the sweat from his brow, his fingers slick with the cold perspiration of panic. He could still feel the power of the alien core humming beneath his fingers, thrumming with the energy that surged through the ship. But despite the shields holding firm, a cold knot of dread twisted in his stomach. "I think so," he said, his voice hoarse. "But we need to get the warp drive running, or this whole thing is a waste. The Tyrixians, they won't stop until we're dead." Lyra's eyes darkened with a mixture of fear and grim determination. "If we don't get out of here, We'll all be dead. The Tyrixians won't stop. There's no way they'll let me escape with the weapon intact. Ryan's hands shook as he turned to the ship's inner console, attempting to access the warp drive's interface. The controls were like nothing he'd ever seen, sleek, alien, and far more complex than any machinery on Earth. Every button he pressed seemed to send a shock of electric feedback through his fingers. The ship groaned as it responded, the core glowing brighter in response to his commands. But it wasn't enough. The Tyrixian warship rumbled again, a deep, bone-rattling sound that made the very ground beneath him shudder. Ryan's eyes shot up to the sky just in time to see the massive, black shape of the warship fire once more. A blast of red energy erupted from its cannons, and Ryan's heart lurched in his chest as the beam arced toward them. "Hold on," Lyra shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the rear of the ship. Ryan barely had time to react as the beam struck the shield with a resounding crack, splintering the air around them. The force field shimmered violently, sending out shockwaves that rattled Ryan's bones. The shield held, but the feedback from the blast caused the ship's engines to sputter in response. "We don't have much time." Lyra's voice was raw, filled with panic. "We have to stabilize the core, or it will destabilize the entire ship." Ryan's stomach dropped. He had no idea what "stabilize the core" meant in the context of alien technology, but the urgency in her voice left no room for error. Every second that passed brought them closer to death. He sprinted toward the power core, feeling the cold sweat trickle down his back as another beam from the Tyrixian ship struck the shields. The force was almost unbearable, like the entire planet was being shaken to its core. Ryan grabbed a series of conduits near the core, wrenching them into place as best he could. But the core's energy was unstable, crackling with blue light, and he could feel the pressure building in the air. "Lyra, what the hell do I do now?" he yelled, panic creeping into his voice as the ship trembled. Her eyes flickered in his direction. "Connect the core to the warp conduit. You have to complete the link. I'll stabilize the outer systems to keep the shields intact." Ryan didn't question her. There was no time. With shaking hands, he reached for the warp conduit, desperately plugging in the wires as the ship groaned beneath him, like it was alive and fighting against the repairs. The Tyrixians weren't slowing down, and every second they spent exposed was a death sentence. The ground beneath them trembled violently as the Tyrixian warship fired again. And this time, the blast slammed into the shield with enough force to create a massive ripple in the air. Ryan's vision blurred, his breath ragged as the ship around them groaned under the impact. Lyra's face was tight with concentration, but her eyes flickered nervously. She was doing everything she could to hold the ship together. But even her alien abilities had limits, and if they didn't get the core stabilized soon, the shields wouldn't last. Ryan began, but his words were cut off by another violent jolt as the ship shuddered from the impact. The consoles in front of him sparked, lights flickering as the power fluctuated. He was running out of time. One more wire. One more connection. That's all they needed. With trembling hands, Ryan shoved the final conduit into place. The ship's entire hull shook as the connection sparked to life. The core flared with blinding blue energy, flooding the ship with a surge of power that made the air crackle. Ryan staggered back, momentarily blinded by the light. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but the overwhelming surge of energy coursing through the ship. Then the hum of the engines became a roar as the warp drive powered up, and a deep, throbbing pulse emanated from the heart of the ship. The shields flickered for a moment, but they held strong, now reinforced by the power surge. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "We're ready," she said, her face a mixture of relief and fear. "Now, we're leaving." Ryan barely had time to react before the ship's engines roared to life, sending a shockwave of energy blasting outward. He stumbled forward, barely catching his balance as the ship lurched into motion. The Tyrixian warship wasn't finished, though. It fired once more, a final, desperate blast. But it was too late. The warp drive engaged, and with a sudden, blinding flash, the ship lurched forward, tearing through space. The ship lurched again, sending Ryan crashing into the side of the console. His vision blurred for a moment as the ship tore through the fabric of space, the stars outside streaking into elongated lines of light. The warp drive was working. At least, it seemed to be. But everything was still spinning, the ship vibrating violently beneath him, and the reality of what they had just done slammed into him like a punch to the gut. "Lyra!" Ryan shouted, pushing himself off the console, barely able to keep his footing as the ship continued its rapid jump through space. Are we in the clear?" Lyra stood near the control panel, her glowing eyes focused intently on the readings flashing in front of her. The ship's movements were erratic, but her composure never wavered. "Not yet," she replied sharply, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We've made the jump, but we're not out of danger." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "The Tyrixians. They'll follow us," she interrupted, turning to face him with a look of grim certainty. "They have ships capable of tracking the warp signature. They won't stop hunting us." Ryan's stomach dropped. "So we're not safe?" "Not yet." The ship continued to lurch and shake as it traveled through the warp, the sensation of weightlessness pulling at Ryan's stomach. The stars outside warped in every direction, stretching into strange, distorted shapes, as if the very fabric of space was bending and twisting. It was dizzying, unnatural. Lyra moved toward the rear of the ship, her movements fluid and confident despite the chaos. "We need to recalibrate the engines to stabilize the jump. The Tyrixians won't be far behind, and we need to make sure we're not just floating in space when they catch up." Ryan followed her, adrenaline coursing through his veins. His mind was still racing, trying to process everything that had happened. Just hours ago, he was working on a simple engine repair, and now he was stuck on an alien ship running for his life, with no idea what he was supposed to do next. He caught up with her as she reached a panel near the rear of the ship. She was already tapping commands into the alien interface with expert precision, her hands moving so fast Ryan couldn't keep up. "The Tyrixians have tracking technology. If we don't adjust our trajectory, we'll be an easy target. We'll be dead before we even see them." Ryan swallowed hard, a cold chill running down his spine. "And you know how to fix this." Lyra didn't look at him as she continued to work. "I do, but it's not going to be easy. The ship is still in disarray after the damage. And the warp engines, they're more complicated than you can imagine." Ryan's pulse quickened. The air around him felt thick, suffocating, as the reality of their situation hit him full force. The Tyrixians weren't just chasing them, they were hunting them, and if they didn't figure this out fast, they'd be trapped in the cold, endless expanse of space. No hope, no escape. "Will the engines hold?" he asked, a hint of panic creeping into his voice. Lyra paused for a split second, her hand hovering above the console. For the briefest moment, her confident facade cracked, her glowing eyes darkened with a shadow of doubt. "I don't know, but we don't have a choice." Ryan's blood ran cold as she hit a series of buttons, and the ship jolted again, this time with a sharper, more violent shake. The warp field flickered around them, and for a horrifying moment, the stars outside vanished completely, replaced by a blinding, unnatural light. And then it was gone. The ship was thrown back into the void. The warp engine sputtered and groaned, its energy output unstable. They were no longer in the stream of warped space. They were somewhere else, somewhere uncharted. Ryan stumbled forward, gripping the nearest console for support. "What just happened?" he demanded, his voice strained with disbelief. Lyra looked up from her controls, her expression unreadable. "We're off course. The jump was too unstable." She turned toward him, her gaze piercing. "We've entered uncharted space." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The words hung in the air, thick with a sense of dread. Uncharted space, a place no one had ever traveled to. No maps, No coordinates, nothing to guide them. They were drifting in a void alone, with only the Tyrixians close behind. A cold sweat dripped down Ryan's back as he realized the full weight of their situation. Are we lost?" he asked, barely able to keep his voice steady. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She seemed lost in thought for a moment, her eyes flicking over the readouts as she processed the data. Finally, she looked up, her face pale but determined. "No," she said, her voice firm. "We're not lost. But we're far from safe. And now we've got more problems than just the Tyrixians. This place, something about it is wrong." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Lyra's eyes narrowed as she stared out into the blackness of space, her body tense. "I don't know. But this ship is picking up something. Another presence. And it's not friendly." Ryan's blood froze as the ship's sensors beeped urgently. A new warning signal flashed across the display, a hostile presence closing in on their location. "We're not alone," Lyra muttered. The hairs on the back of Ryan's neck stood up. Something else was out there, lurking in the darkness. And whatever it was coming for them. The air inside the ship was thick with the hum of malfunctioning systems, the faint crackle of static cutting through the uneasy silence. Ryan's eyes flicked nervously to the control panels, which were now flashing with urgent warnings. They were stranded, lost in uncharted space, with no idea what they were up against. And then there was the presence. The strange signal that had appeared on their scanners was like a ghost, flickering in and out, too faint to pinpoint, yet undeniable. The ship's sensors had gone haywire ever since they'd entered this place, this void. And now they were receiving constant, garbled signals from the unknown entity. It was drawing closer. Whatever it was moving fast. Lyra's voice broke through the tension, quiet but intense. "Ryan, we need to leave. Now." "What do you mean leave?" "We can't even." Ryan started, but Lyra cut him off with a sharp glance. "I'm not talking about the Tyrixians," she said, her eyes locked onto the readouts. "Whatever's out there is coming for us. And if we don't move now, we'll be sitting ducks." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He'd thought the Tyrixians were the biggest threat. But now this. Something worse was out there. And they had no idea what it was. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened in the past few hours. The crash, the repair, the fight to escape. And now this new terrifying unknown. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Ryan asked, his voice unsteady. "Can you tell what it is?" Lyra shook her head, her face pale and strained. "No. Whatever it is, it's not normal. The energy signature. It's not anything I've ever encountered. It's not like anything from this universe." Ryan stared at her, his stomach tightening. "What do you mean, not from this universe?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. Her hands flew over the ship's controls, adjusting the power settings, attempting to stabilize the systems as much as possible. She was working fast, but even she looked unsure. The situation was slipping out of control, and they were still sitting in the dark, waiting for something they couldn't even comprehend to arrive. Ryan could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing up as the ship's lights flickered. The air seemed to grow colder, heavier, as if something was pressing in from all sides. His pulse quickened, the room feeling smaller, tighter, as though the ship itself was closing in on them. "We need to get out of here," Ryan repeated, panic edging into his voice. "Whatever it is, it's too close now. We're not ready to face it." Lyra glanced up from the console, her expression hardening. "You're right. But we don't have a choice." The ship trembled suddenly, a low, metallic groan running through the walls. Ryan staggered, barely managing to catch himself as the tremors grew stronger. His heart pounded in his chest as the temperature inside the ship dropped sharply, and the air felt thick with a sense of something wrong. A scream of distortion blasted through the ship's communication system, static warping the sounds into something unintelligible. Ryan's breath hitched. The voice that emerged from the static wasn't human. It was low, mechanical, and full of a strange, unholy malice. A jolt of terror shot through Ryan's body. He wasn't imagining it. Something was out there, communicating with them through the distortion. It was real. Lyra's hand hovered over the comms panel, trying to get control of the system. She looked at Ryan, her face taut with fear. "We got to go, Ryan. Now." Before he could react, the ship shuddered violently again, this time almost knocking him off his feet. The energy field surrounding them flickered erratically, and the hum of the warp drive faltered. "Shit," Ryan cursed, gripping the side of the console for support. "What the hell is happening?" Lyra's eyes were wide with alarm. "The entity, it's manipulating our systems. It's trying to disable the warp drive." Ryan's mind raced. The Tyrixians were nothing compared to whatever this was. They could fight. They could defend themselves. But this was something else entirely. Something far beyond their comprehension. "We need to get out of the warp field," Ryan said, desperation rising in his chest. "We need to shut it down before it disables the ship entirely." Lyra was already working to disengage the warp field, her hands flying over the controls. She shot Ryan a glance as she manipulated the systems with impossible speed. "I'm trying, but the ship's systems are failing faster than I can compensate. If we don't do something, we'll be stuck here, forever." Ryan's heart sank. Stuck. He couldn't even begin to fathom the implications of what she was saying. The reality of the situation was setting in with a terrifying clarity. The ship groaned again, louder this time, as if some invisible hand was squeezing the life out of it. A deep, hollow, unearthly growl reverberated through the walls, and Ryan felt it in his bones, a sound so alien, so wrong, it chilled him to his core. The unknown entity was close, and it was waiting. "We're not alone," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "This thing, it's older than anything we've encountered. It's not just tracking us, it's hunting us." Ryan's blood ran cold. The creature, the force, whatever it was, wasn't just a threat. It was something far worse, something beyond their ability to understand, and yet, it had found them. And now, it was closing in. The ship groaned again, the walls buckling under unseen pressure. Ryan's mind raced, trying to process the nightmare unfolding around him. Lyra's hands moved with frantic precision across the console, desperately attempting to regain control of the ship, but nothing worked. The systems were corrupted. The power was fading. The entity was too powerful, and it was toying with them. Ryan's breath caught as he heard the growl again. Low, sinister, it vibrated through his bones. This time, it wasn't distant. It was in the walls, the air, the very core of the ship. He glanced at Lyra, who was staring at the display, her face pale but resolute. She could feel it too. They both could. "It's getting inside," Ryan whispered, his voice barely audible. Lyra nodded, her glowing eyes flickering with fear. "It's manipulating the ship's systems. We're trapped." Ryan's blood ran cold. Trapped. That was a word he'd never wanted to hear. The walls around them seemed to close in, the eerie darkness outside the ship pressing in, suffocating them. The Tyrixians were forgotten now, lost in the shadow of the new threat. He took a step toward her, his voice rising with urgency. "Can't you do something? Anything?" Lyra's eyes flicked up to meet his, and for the first time since they'd met, Ryan saw the vulnerability in her gaze. "I can't control it," she said, her voice breaking. "This thing, it's older than I can comprehend. It's not just alive, Ryan. It's sentient. And it's not just hunting us. It's been waiting. Waiting." Ryan's stomach twisted. The weight of her words sank in. This wasn't just a mindless predator. This was something far older, far more intelligent, and it had been waiting for them. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, and Ryan's feet slipped on the slick metal floor as the lights flickered again. He grabbed hold of a railing to steady himself, his heart pounding in his chest. The low growl came again, closer this time, so close that it rattled his teeth. He could feel it in the air, the way it vibrated against his skin. Lyra's voice cut through the panic. "There's a core, an ancient core in the depths of the ship. It's not just power. It's alive. If we can reach it, we might be able to break the entity's hold." Ryan blinked. "Alive? What do you mean, alive?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "The core isn't just a power source. It's a conduit. And if we disrupt it, it could sever the connection the entity has with the ship." Ryan didn't hesitate. He nodded sharply. "Where do we go?" Lyra pointed to the lower levels, her voice filled with urgency. "We need to get to the central chamber, but we're running out of time." A terrifying roar erupted from the walls, a sound so fierce and deafening that Ryan felt the air crush in around him. The ship trembled, and the lights flickered out completely for a moment. When they came back on, Ryan felt it. The presence was here. Inside the ship, surrounding them. The walls warped as if the very structure of the vessel was bending under the entity's will. "Let's go," Ryan shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her toward the nearest access shaft. He could feel the temperature drop even further, the air thick with dread. It wasn't just the ship anymore. It was them. The entity was here, and it was closing in fast. They sprinted through the narrow hallways, the ship's corridors twisting and groaning under the weight of the entity's presence. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as they descended deeper into the ship. Every step felt like an eternity, the air growing colder, heavier, as though something was watching them. Then they reached it. The central chamber was a massive, glowing orb, a pulsing core of energy that flickered with alien light. It was alive, that much was clear. And inside it, the entity waited. "We're running out of time," Lyra gasped, her voice strained. She grabbed the nearest control panel, her hands moving rapidly as she tried to disengage the core's link to the ship. "I need you to help me. We're almost there." Ryan didn't hesitate. He stepped beside her, his fingers shaking as he worked with her to manipulate the controls. The entire ship felt as though it was thrumming with energy. Too much energy, too much power. But as they worked, the core began to pulse faster, brighter. The entity roared from the depths of the ship, its power flooding through the ship's systems like a tidal wave. Suddenly, the ship's comm system crackled to life again, the voice of the entity emerging from the static, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through Ryan's very soul. "You cannot escape." Ryan's blood ran cold. The words were so clear, so final, that they sent a chill through his entire being. There was no question now. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for control of their fate. With one final push, Lyra slammed her hands onto the console, and the core's power surged, the ship's systems groaning in protest. The connection to the entity was severed with a violent electric crack that rocked the entire ship. And then, silence. The hum of the ship faded. The oppressive presence lifted. Ryan's heart was pounding in his chest as he looked at Lyra. She was breathing heavily, her face pale but filled with relief. The core's light flickered, then dimmed. The entity was gone. "We did it," Ryan whispered, barely able to believe the words. But Lyra's eyes were still scanning the control panel, her face tense. "We did," she said softly. "But there's something else, something that shouldn't be here." Before Ryan could respond, the ship lurched again. A new presence, one far stronger than anything they had encountered, began to materialize. Something else had been watching, and it was coming for them now.